Good late afternoon or early evening for some of you guys. It's now a few hours after the Packers game ended, so we've gotten some clarity on the injuries that happened in this game. And initially, I thought we kind of got out of there relatively unscathed, but it was a little worse than I thought. So I want to go over some of this stuff because some of this stuff has a chance to really affect the real game in 15 days. And yeah, it's 2 weeks away, the first game, so we still have time for these guys to get right and get ready. But I do want to talk about what happened according to Carroll. So first, we're going to start with Devin Bush because Devin Bush, that's a guy who I think was going to start. I don't know, maybe Brooks would have just immediately vaulted ahead of him, but Bush was a guy I would say is a starter right now in the 3-4 traditional defense that we run. So Devin Bush, initially I thought he just got the wind knocked out of him and it wasn't a big deal, but Carroll came out after the game and said he actually got a concussion. So that is not something you just brush off. That is not something you can just dismiss. Traditionally speaking, when a player gets a concussion, you can count on them to miss a couple weeks. So that would mean that if this is a typical concussion, he would be basically trying to beat the buzzer to play in this Rams game. And he would probably make it if you assume that it's a normal, typical concussion, but you're not going to know if he's ready to play until you get pretty close to game time. So definitely not good. This is probably going to keep him out of practice for the next week, and who knows how that could affect his preparation. The good news is he was mostly healthy during this training camp, so at least he got all that time. But this was not good. And by the way, what was he doing out there? It was like the third quarter. It was a special teams play. Like somebody's gonna have to explain that one to me because Devin Bush, if he's a borderline starter, like a semi-starter, which as of right now I believe he is, why is he on special teams in the third preseason game in the third quarter? So yeah, that I'm not too happy about. If there was something in this game that I thought we handled poorly in a way that actually matters, it was this. Important players have no business playing on special teams in the third quarter of the last preseason game. But yeah, we're going to have to monitor this and hope it's the kind of concussion that clears up after 2 weeks. That wouldn't mean he could play in week one. The other one this one I thought was actually significant, and we don't know that yet, but here's the tweet from Mike Dugar about Joey Blount. He has a shoulder injury. So, no real details beyond that. It's a shoulder injury. That could mean so many different things. So, that one's kind of tough to guess at this point. The good news is it's Joey Blount. And I don't mean any respect to Joe, and I don't mean any disrespect to Joey Blount when I say that because he is a valuable special teamer and I like him, but even healthy, he was unlikely to make this roster because of how good Jarek Reed is playing. So Joey Blount was probably competing for the practice squad, and now, because of this, he might get waived, and if he makes it through, which he probably would because he's hurt, makes it through waivers, he goes to our IR list. So he would still get to be on the team for the year, he would still get some money, but he just wouldn't be able to play because of the injury. So if the injury's serious, that's probably what's going to happen here, and he'll end up okay. In fact, it might be a little bit better for him than it would have been if he had just gotten on the practice squad. It depends on your perspective. So if it's serious, then that's not good. But either way, this was not a guy who was going to seriously affect our season, I don't think. He was a good special teamer, but we didn't have room for him anymore because of the new safeties we brought in. So that's Joey Blount, and there was a third injury today that I didn't even notice. Derek Hall, he has a shoulder sprain. So it doesn't sound that bad, but it does sound potentially bad enough to cost him a little bit of time this season. We're going to have to definitely take some time before we figure out how bad this is. It doesn't seem like it's that bad, but the fact that they already classified it as a shoulder sprain has me thinking he could miss some time in the regular season. Now, Derek Hall is a backup. He is firmly a backup because we're getting Darrell Taylor back. So it's not a huge loss, and I understand that Derek Hall needs to be out there for these preseason games because he's a rookie and he's not that high on the depth chart. But this is too bad because he was playing pretty well lately. He looked pretty good this offseason, and now I have to believe he's going to miss at the very least this week one game. Again, I'm going to continue to say it. We should be slow rolling things in this week one game against the Rams. If somebody might need to sit out, you probably just need to let them sit out. And you can assume that you should be winning the game anyway, and that if you don't, something went really, really wrong. So if we need these guys to sit out for that first game, and there could be a lot of guys in that group, in that camp, then do it. But shoulder sprains for Derek Hall, maybe in a few days we'll get some kind of a timetable. But with these kinds of things, they often just say we'll have to wait and see how it responds to treatment. That's kind of the quote that keeps coming up when NFL teams talk about certain injuries. We can't put a timetable on it because we need to see how it responds to treatment. But bad news for Derek Hall, obviously. Not fun, not good. Hopefully he finds his way back soon. Now let's talk about a little bit of maybe good news. We did get a couple of updates that pertain to players that had been injured previously, like JSN. And this tweet from Crabtree has a little update on JSN. He made it back to the team, making progress following surgery, and he's pushing to get back quickly. And it seems like he's going to beat, or at the very least meet, the timeline expectations. So I'm going to take that as good news. If he can get back in time for week 2 against the Detroit Lions, that's a win to me. I wish he was going to be able to play in every game this year, but at this point, I fully expect him to miss that game against the Rams, and I'm totally cool with that. As far as I know, Bobo made it through the game today with no injuries, so he should be ready to play week 1, and that'll just have to be enough. It'll have to be enough. I mean, we still have some of the best receivers in the league with Metcalf and Lockett, so what we have without JSN needs to be enough. But sounds like everything went well there. The surgery went well, the rehab's going well, and there's some reason to believe he could even beat the original expected timetable. More from Michael Sean Dugar about Jordan Brooks. Also, I'm going to call this good news. Pete Carroll has said he'd be shocked if Jordan Brooks isn't playing week 1. Now, he didn't say starting. However, if Devin Bush's concussion is a little more serious and he ends up not being cleared to play for week 1, then at least you've got this in your back pocket where you have another player who is, I mean, he's not terrible. He's not a backup. He's got NFL experience. He's got NFL starting experience and is good in some areas as a player, right? At least you've got this in your back pocket now. So it sounds like Brooks is going to be ready to go. My ideal would be Wagner starts at inside linebacker. Devin Bush is the other inside linebacker who comes in on running downs. And then Brooks is the backup. And if something happens, then Brooks is ready to go. But because he's just coming back from this injury, he can just kind of go through the motions, maybe play a couple of snaps and not push it. But it sounds like Brooks is going to be ready to play the whole game if he has to. Because the way they're talking about it, they're not acting like, oh, he'll be physically fit enough to play in the game. They're not acting like, oh, we're not going to play him, but he'll be ready. No, they're acting like they're going to play him. So I'm going to definitely call that good news, especially with what happened to Bush today. All right, that's it. So enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I should be on Twitch later tonight, but those are the injury updates of recent since the game ended. Just wanted to pass that along. See you guys later. Go Hawks, and some of the good and some of the not so good, I guess.